How's it going, everybody? This is Steve, and I am rolling up on my third year being Titan swapped. So I figured I'd talk about what I like, what I don't like, what I'd change, and looking back if I would do anything differently. Figured we'd talk about that. Most of the Titan swap content we see is people who you see they've just done it, or they're looking to do it, but you don't really get many years out looking back perspectives. So I figured that we'd give that a shot and see if we can learn anything from it. So Titan swapped about 3 years ago. I had two friends help me. I did it in my friend's garage, and it took us, I believe, about 6 or 7 hours to do just the front. We ran into a couple issues. Primary issue we ran into was the lower control arm bolts were seized in there. I had never replaced them before, and the truck had, I think it had like 70,000 miles on it. So that was really, really difficult to do. Overall, it's a pretty DIY friendly mod to do, considering that it's all bolt-on. My original configuration is pretty different than what I have now. My original configuration was I ran the Tundra Bilstein 5100s with factory top hats, SPC uppers, which I still have now, tie rod extensions, which I still have now, and then I was running Moog lower control arms and 24-inch brake lines in the front. And then in the rear, I was running an Adeleaf with a 2-inch shackle with Bilstein 5125, the 24-inch ones in the rear. As far as being a budget-oriented setup, it's pretty good. The problem with the Tundra Bilstein 5100s that I had in the front is that they are way too long for the application unless they are modified in some way. And the ones I had were just Tundra Bilstein 5100s with a Frontier top hat, and they came out to be pretty long. I'll drop a picture of what it looked like when it was done. You can see I have way too much ride height, and I ran through CV axles like crazy. I can count multiple times where I had one instance where I was just driving down the road, and I had a bump, and I drooped so far down that it literally ripped my CV axle out of the differential, and it actually damaged the differential. So that was a big problem I ran into. Later down the road, swapped those out for Radflow 2.5s. The price difference is pretty significant, but the ride quality differences were night and day. No more blowing up CV axles, and they're still treating me very well to this day. No rebuilds have been done on the Radflows yet, as far as internal goes. I have pulled them apart, cleaned them, but I have never popped them open, and they are still doing just fine. The downsides of the Radflows, though, is just like any racing coilover, it uses spherical bearings at the top and the bottom, so they are going to make more noise than a shock that has rubber bushings. Just something that you need to accept and understand if you're going to get into that racing coilover territory. It just comes with it. There are some ways you can mitigate the noise. The factory Bilstein lower shock bolt has a taper from 14 down to 12 mil. And that can bounce around, causing some noise. So we sell 14 mil bolts at All Dogs Off Road, or you can just hunt them down, a grade 8, 14 mil. Can't remember the length. Hunt those down; it'll help significantly. Weld washers on the lower control arms is also something I'd look at. I've widened out 3 sets of lowers by now. As far as the tie rod extensions go, they're just fine. Any long travel kit out there basically uses tie rod extensions, but we're just lucky that you can also use Titan inner and outers. Those are, they're on paper, they're a better option, but if you don't want to mess with inner tie rods, tie rod extension works just fine. There's 3-ish manufacturers for tie rod extensions, so they're pretty easy to find. Things in the front that I've changed out, it would pretty much just be the front shocks. I've swapped out the lowers 3 times just because first time I bent the lower control arm. I was wheeling pretty hard, pretty fast. The second time I swapped it out was because I had widened out that bolt hole, and then the third time was because I had widened out the bolt hole again. Both were Mevertech arms, and then I destroyed the ball joint on one. So multiple replacements for multiple reasons, but try to find a high quality lower control arm when you do. It doesn't necessarily need to be a boxed aftermarket lower. Just don't go bottom of the barrel OEM style. That's pretty much the only thing I've swapped out in the front. The SPC Titan upper control arms are treating me very, very well. They are tried and true. I would recommend them to anybody over anything on the market, as long as you're not racing the truck and you don't need uniball strength. As far as the rear is pretty much completely different than it was when I first did it. The first thing I swapped out was my factory leaf pack with a single blade Adeleaf. I ditched that, and I'm now running our All Dogs Off-Road Performance Pack. It's the original prototype is the one I'm running, so it's a little bit different than what's in production now, but still treating me very well. It flexes like crazy. I'll throw a picture up here for you, and rides really well. It rides smooth. The only gripe I have with it is the same gripe I would have with any leaf pack that doesn't have an overload leaf. The benefits of wheel travel, you also have to take the fact that it's not going to handle weight as well. So any weight fluctuations, you're really gonna feel that more than you would with a leaf pack that has an overload leaf. But again, more wheel travel. It's a pro and con trade-off type of thing. The rear shocks are gone, thank God. I really didn't like them very much. The Bilsteins in the rear didn't really pair well with the Radflows in the front, so I swapped those out for Radflow 2.0 with remote res rear shocks. I had those custom built to a little bit longer than most Titan swap rears, just to account for how much droop I have with the performance pack with the 2-inch shackles. And that's a great setup. It rides really well. The remote res 2.0 is a great option for the rear on our trucks because they're very light in the rear, so the benefits of a 2.5 shock aren't as great as they would be running on the front of the truck. So I opted for the 2.0 remote res, and I'm very happy with it so far. All of that comes down to the fact that, looking back, if I could give myself one piece of advice, it would be to identify the things that need to be done right away and allocate more money towards those things to get the right part starting off, and then take things that you can upgrade later down the road and just reallocate money to different places, if that makes sense. For example, I definitely would not have gone with the Tundra 5100s to start. They're a good budget option, but you have to do modifications to them, and if you don't want to do those modifications, I would 100% recommend going right with Radflow, or if there is later down the road another Titan swap option, I would recommend going with that. From my perspective, looking back, I would recommend going with a proper Titan swap shock right off the bat. The headaches of repairing and rebuilding CV axles every couple months was a pain in the butt, and it just feels nice to have something that's made for the application. So that's something that I would not have cheaped out on right away, looking back. Very happy I went with SBC uppers right off the bat. Those are the two biggest things I would just say never cheap out on. Never cheap out on the coilovers and your upper control arms. Those are the most important part of the Titan swap. So I know it's appealing seeing an OEM Titan upper on A1 Auto or whatever for $25–50, but just trust me, from someone who's done it, wouldn't recommend. Now, again, tie rod extension, a budget option. Definitely nothing wrong with going that route. OEM inner and outers, those are pretty cheap. As far as brake lines, I didn't cover this before. I went with 24-inch brake lines originally. I don't really have a reason why. I was pretty uninformed when I was doing my Titan swap. I was quite a novice at that time. But just thought 24 might be a good option to go with. Looking back, I've now actually swapped out my 24-inch lines for 18-inch lines, and they are much better. I had way too much slack with a 24-inch line, and that's in the front. In the rear, I am actually not running extended lines. They are not necessary for a Titan swap. With a 2-inch shackle and All Dogs performance leaf packs or anything else, you really don't need them. You can simply unclip your the brake line brackets from the axle, and you have plenty of slack. I believe I have a picture I can drop on the video, and I'll show you how much slack there is. But not a concern with the Titan swap. there aren't really any Titan Swap rear shocks on the market that would allow your suspension to droop past the limitations of your brake lines. So just don't worry about that. If you're on a budget right away, it's just something that you don't need to dump money into. Yeah, one question I get all the time is, you see this all the time when people talk about Titan swaps. They're saying, why would you do that? You can just buy a Titan. Or why would you do that? There's a 6-inch lift on the market. Or, whatever. The best part about the Titan swap is just that it's just a purpose-driven mod. When I first did it, I will admit that I didn't really wheel my truck a ton, but I definitely aspired to, and I consulted with a bunch of people, and everyone was telling me, if you're going to spend a couple grand on a proper Frontier kit, you can just spend a little bit more and get a Titan swap, and it'll treat you much better off-road in the long run. So that's something that I trusted them, and I did it, and I'm very, very thankful I did. You take, for example, a Radflow extended travel kit, which is $2,100 or so, just for like an entry-level Radflow extended travel kit with SPC uppers. And then you take a Titan swap, which is like $2,600 before, and then there's just a couple OE parts that you need, which adds on a couple $100. And the price differences really aren't significant. And the gains that you get by going with the Titan swap are much higher. As long as the wheel offset isn't a problem to you and the lack of sway bar isn't a problem to you, 100% would recommend going to the Titan swap right off the bat. Another thing to note with the Titan swap, if you're looking to do it, is, I kind of touched on this back when we were talking about the Radflows, is that any modification that's going to make your vehicle significantly more capable off-road, there are going to be compromises made in other aspects. For example, my truck does not drive on the road as well as it did when it was stock. You can whip corners real fast when you're stock. You can, you don't have to worry about some things. And with the Titan swap, there's just more wear and tear. It does not take corners as well, and it can ride a little bit tighter or firmer on the road in some aspects. But the second that you get off road, you can just your capabilities are much higher. So again, it's all going to be trade-offs, and the same thing with your Radflows. It's not an entry-level shock. It's going to require maintenance. If you treat it well, it will treat you well. This first picture is one of the first things I ever did when I finished my Titan swap. This is with the Tundra 5100s, actually. It was just the place I was living. We just cut down a tree, and I decided I was going to crawl up on that. It was very scary. It was very off camber for me. It was the first time I've ever really climbed something like that before, and it was pretty exciting to see the capabilities of a Freshly Titan swap truck. I believe I can drop a picture of a comparison between before and after the Titan swap. It was me just on a baby branch, and then me on a big log. And the Titan swap has taken me all over the country. I've done all of the Central Appalachians up in Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, all in that area. So much fun. I would ride with Camo, which is for Central Appalachian Mountain Overland. Great guys over there. And then now that I'm in the Midwest, wheeling in Kansas and Tuttle Creek, and all over there. I've done Bald Eagle State Forest, George Washington State Forest, I believe. And then I'm really excited to go out west soon here, coming up. And then, the Titan swap is definitely the mod if you're trying to be wheeling heavy. And this picture is me at Tuttle Creek doing one of the bigger rock climbs I've ever done. Banged the crap out of my skid plate on one of those hits. I'll actually drop a picture of that too. Grinded it down pretty hard, but it's 3/16 steel, so it held up pretty well. Lastly, or second to lastly, we'll decide in a sec, is finally when I got new wheels and tires. I got the Black Rhino Stadiums, 17 by 8.5-inch wheels. And then I threw on Patagonia, Milestar Patagonia MTs. They are 34 by 12, and they are gnarly. They ride surprisingly well for a mud terrain, and I am super excited to get these on the trail. Haven't had a chance to because we've been in the dead of winter and terrible weather, but I'm going down to Tuttle Creek here shortly to break those in, so I'm super excited for that. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed. Since I was coming up on my 3rd year anniversary of doing a Titan swap, I figured it would be a great opportunity to look back, reminisce on what I did, what I would do differently, and share that with you guys so that you can make a more informed buying decision when you're looking to do your Titan swap. So thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.